What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 300. Was it 363?
363.
363. Very excited about tonight's episode because we get to talk about a race that I have heard about, never had the desire to enter, but luckily have some friends that have run it. Most recently, our dear friend Andy Pearson ran the Vol State 500K. It's essentially a run through 5 states, but across Tennessee, like almost the full long ways. It's ridiculous. Starting in Missouri. I hope I'm Missouri, as West Coasters would say. And then all the way to Georgia through Tennessee.
You combined them.
Missouri and Georgia. Thank you. We get to talk to Andy Pearson tonight all about the Vol State 500K. It took him days to finish. He's got tons of fun stories. I can't wait to dig in. Great friend of the show, Andy. So here we go, everyone. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode 363. The show begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 363. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Very excited about tonight's show because our guest is a friend of the show. He's been on a number of times now, and it seems like every time we bring on Andy Pearson, our guest, it's because he's done something dumb, like some crazy event.
He's running some sort of race or event that neither of us would ever be interested in doing. But we love to hear about it.
We love to hear about it. We love to live kind of vicariously through him. But he's an incredible ultra runner who just does these really difficult, big undertakings, big challenges that are either race format or DIY style projects. But we've had him on after Bigfoot. We've had him on after Backyard Ultra. And tonight we're going to talk all about the Vol State 500K. We haven't had anyone on the show talk about this event yet. I can't wait to find out what it's like running across the state of Tennessee without aid stations, through the night, through storms, navigating along highways and through neighborhoods and trying to find sleep and cover. And it's just going to be crazy. So
Sounds
I guess
delightful.
it sounds like a perfectly peaceful summer week. Andy Pearson's going to join us on the show tonight to talk all about that. I'm very excited about that. But it's not just our guests. It's not just myself. We also got Kim. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well. What's up, everyone? Kim Shima Newberry here. As always, if you're new, pop into the chat room and say hello. We will be having Andy on in just a second. So if you have questions for Andy, you can ask them in the chat room.
Yes. And of course, before we introduce Andy, we do have some individuals we'd like to thank at the top of the show. It is our GR crew. It is because of them that we're able to do these live shows, our reviews, our daily live streams. All of the projects that we do here behind the scenes, it is because of our GR crew. So a huge thank you to everyone that supports us over at patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers contribute and get some really fun perks, including tonight's after show with Andy. All tiers get that access, and it's just a lot of fun. We appreciate the crew so much. 3 individuals in particular at the top tier kind of go above and beyond and truly inspire us. Brian Sands, he ran his first marathon, first ultra, first 100-miler, currently training for his first 200-miler. He is just a true inspiration that we've sort of been able to have joined this community and foster that inspiration amongst so many other individuals. Rick Bjarnason out of British Columbia, Canada. He helped redesign the gingerrunner.com website. Mm-hmm. He's also an ultra runner, so it's kind of this cool collaboration. He and his company cheekymonkeymedia.ca, they are the ones that redid the gingerrunner.com website. Go check it out. And if you have any web needs or online needs, they are fantastic. We got a chance to work with them over the last couple of years with the website, and it's great. And finally, our dear friend Brendan Quarrel out of Australia. He himself is training for the Yuyang's 100-miler, which is going to be running in 2025. He wants to run it before he is 60. And over the course of the next few years, he's going to be running. So Yuyang's is this race in Australia. It has a bunch of different distances. He'll be running all of the distances over the coming years in training for his 100-miler. Again, another inspiring individual that is an amazing member to have to our community. Yes. Thank you, Brendan, and thank you, Brian, and thank you, Rick. Appreciate you all. Without further ado, coming to us all the way from beautiful, sunny Southern California, our dear friend, Andy Pearson.
Yay!
Hi, Andy.
Hi, guys. How are
What's
you?
up, dude?
Not much. Just hanging out. Just hoping my body still works and I can run again after running a lot recently.
I mentioned that there at the top of the show. I feel like every time we have you on the show, it's because you've done something again. You've done something that's
And he's
you've done
done
it again.
Pro tip:
Man.
just do stupid stuff and you'll get on GRL Live. I guess is the story.
I honestly, man, I'm super curious.
Yeah.
When we met many years ago, just being an ultra runner was like, wow, we're all doing ultras and 50Ks and 50 milers. At what point do you think you started getting into doing just the more sort of crazier end of the spectrum? Like Backbone, we had you on talking a little bit about the Backbone. I remember that was, I think, the last episode. But we're talking Bigfoot and Backyard and all these other things that are just kind of next level.
There's sort of like, there were two moments. One was finishing Western States about 5 years ago, I think it was. I finished and I put together a really great race. I was really proud of it. It was like 2023 or something. And I was just like, okay, I figured it out. I was like, I got hundreds. I did it. I'm not worried about it. I feel like I have it dialed in. And I was like, I need something that is going to scare me again. And that's like immediately the seed was like Bigfoot. And that's sort of where that got planted in my brain. And then the other time was, I was really obsessed with Big's Backyard Ultra when I first heard about it. Like, first Laz had written a piece about it in ultra running and no one really knew about it at the time. And I read it. I was like, this is the perfect race. And then I went and did it. And it just it blew my mind to suddenly realize that there are all these other race formats out there. There are all these other things that we could be doing. And like you said, I think when you're coming up, you're so hyper focused on I do a 50K and then I do a 50 and then I do 100. And there's sort of this progression that you work through. And then you do something like Bigs where you're just racing at you realize that it changes the way that you've looked at races, and you have no context to understand what you're doing in that map. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's all these other people that are doing these really inventive styles of races. And so I think that is, to me, just what's most exciting about the sport right now is it's so creative and people are discovering and inventing all these different formats for racing that just take it to all these other places that it's never been before. So, I'll always love 100 milers, and I actually want to go back and maybe do some next year again as oh, that would be fun to do something short again.
Yeah, your easy runs, just running a couple hundreds here and there.
Just something short.
Yeah, but yeah, it's there's just so much out there. And obviously a lot of these races we're talking about too are Laz has created them out of his brain, and so he's obviously kind of single-handedly pushing the sport forward in a lot of really interesting ways.
I like talking about innovation, especially in our sport. I think that's one thing that I am also fascinated by the sport, because it is one thing to do sort of the traditional progression. I call it traditional because it's just what we sort of see when you go from a marathon road distance. You're sort of like, oh wait, there's a thing called a 50K or a 50 miler. You kind of work your way up through the ranks. And having done a 100 miler myself, attempted another one, it is not an easy distance by any means. It's that mindset of, well, what about 200, or what about 250, or what about 500 kilometers, or what about, it can go on and on, but there's just this certain level of trust in yourself that you kind of have to have at that point. When did you feel like you had that? Because you kind of mentioned it there, where you talk about you wanted to have just sort of another challenge, something that scared you a little bit.
Yeah.
When did you trust that you could even complete something like that, or is that not part of the process?
When I finished after I mean, well, to be honest, I say that jokingly, but kind of, but also not really, because I attempted Cocodona 250 earlier this year and I DNF'd way through, and that was really emotionally pretty brutal for me, and it shook my confidence in the ability to just in general, it sort of shook my confidence. And that said, though, it made me really prep in a lot of ways for Vol State in ways that I wouldn't have. And it made me commit to Vol State in a way that I don't know I would have had I not failed at Cocodona.
Interesting.
So after that really made it a very overt point in my mind to like use that as fuel for Vol State and not sort of suffer the same emotional fate there.
I mean, dude, that's a really interesting sort of way to look at it, because us watching you attempt Cocodona 250, of course we're rooting for you, and when we heard that you had to drop, it was sort of like, oh well, Andy's run so many of these distances and so many big grueling races that there was clearly a reason that this one didn't work out. It could have been any number of reasons, whether it's heat or injury or whatever. I would not have thought that the confidence would have wavered. So what happened at Cocodona, and how did it affect you mentally? Like, what was the
Cocodona? I had really, really bad blisters in a way that I've never gotten before, and I really haven't dealt with that before. And Ball State is like notorious for that, because it's like heat and moisture, and you're on the road by yourself, and there's no chance to change, and like, so I already knew that going in, but that made me hypersensitive to prep at Vol State. And yeah, Cocodona is just, the heat was really oppressive, and I couldn't. It was between my feet, just getting really messed up, and a lot of heat. And my parents are gonna be upset if they hear this, but my parents also were crewing me.
Okay.
And I do think I've learned that when I was like I was worried about them. Not that I was worried about them, but like I was deep in the race, and they were doing an awesome job, but they were like patching me together every time they saw me, and I knew it was going to be like this long, drawn out thing, and I kind of felt bad about it, and I think it like somewhere it gave me an easy out to wrap up a lot of excuses and then say like, okay, well, I also don't want to be this drag on my parents and be out here like all these nights and all this stuff. And so I think I allowed myself to like use that as an out a little bit, which I've learned is just a case for me maybe. And but the good thing about Vol State is there's no one there to fucking do anything for you. So there's you're totally on your own. I mean, you're so alone in that race. And so I knew that it was actually going to be probably like a positive thing for me ultimately.
Did you know you were going to do Vol State before you signed up for Cocodona, or before you DNF to Cocodona? So was all that decision?
Yeah, I signed up. I was going to do Vol State last year, and then with there was this thing called coronavirus that like happened last year and stuff. And so like,
heard of it. Yep.
Cool.
It stopped you mid backbone. I remember that.
Yeah. So I decided not to do it. So yeah. So then it was just this stupid year of like, Barkley, Cocodona, Ball State, and then I'm doing hopefully UTMB in the month. So if my legs start working again, I'm doing UTMB.
I can't help but just be like so in awe, man. Like, you do take the sport is already crazy. The sport is already crazy. We've normalized it after 10 years of talking about ultras and talking with ultra runners. It's this sense of normalcy to what we do, and every once in a while, and it's usually with you, Andy, there is something nope, it's not normal. Like, here's the crazy thrown in, and the fact that you've done Barkley this year, Cocodona, Vol State, and now you're prepping to go to UTMB is like, well, of course, if there's any person, it's Andy.
Well, Jamil's doing it too, except his Vol State was Hard Rock, so he has the same year as I do, except his Slam to the Damned is Hard Rock instead.
You too.
Yeah.
I do want to start talking about Vol State, because first let's set the stage. What is this race? What are the different categories, crude or crude and screwed? How does it work? Sort of lay the stage down, because we have some people that might not be familiar with it.
Yeah. And as with any Laz race, there's not a lot of information that exists, so you would not be. It wouldn't be your fault if you didn't know anything. So Ball State essentially is a 314-mile race, about 500K. As you said, we start in Missouri, go all the way through most of Tennessee, and then to Georgia. So we actually go through 5 different states. It begins in Missouri. Hilariously, basically what happens on the race morning is you get on a ferry in Kentucky. You ride the ferry across the Mississippi River to Missouri. Laz lights the cigarette to begin the race, and then everyone just turns around and just walks back onto the ferry, and the race has begun. And then the ferry just slowly takes like 25 minutes to get to the other side while the race clock is ticking, of course.
I do have a map pulled up, so while you're talking, I do have the general map behind you. So yeah, keep going.
So then we run a couple of miles, like 10 miles or so, I think, through Kentucky, and then you're in Tennessee for about almost 300 miles, a little under 300 miles, and then and then the last you spend about a mile or two in Alabama, and then the last about 2 miles or so or 3 are in Georgia. So 5 states in total. You have 10 days to complete it. All self-powered. There's zero aid stations, zero help, unless you are crewed. So crewed runners can have a crew. Obviously, screwed, you're eating out of gas stations, you're sleeping in the ditches, you're begging people for water if you run out, maybe. There are one actually big part about Vol State that's really, really neat, actually, is that there's road angels along the way. So the race has been going on for a while now, and so people along the route have seen these like bedraggled, dying people wandering around their streets, and like started at some point. Someone was like, "Do you want a water?" And then that sort of turned into people setting up sort of unofficial little aid stations in their yards, or in a police station, or in a fire station, or wherever. They're unofficial, so you don't know when they're going to happen. But man, when they happen, I cried at 3 separate occasions during the race, just coming up on aid stations when I like needed it the most, and you're in the middle of nowhere and don't expect it, and then somebody just has like a cooler in their front yard, and you just it's awesome. It's a really awesome unexpected part of the race that I didn't see coming. That you just gain this really, you cover over 300 miles on foot across the state of Tennessee, and you just see all walks of life. You interact with all different people. It's a really special race for that, more than anything else.
We had the map up there, and it's kind of one of the few things that I encourage you, if you're watching, to go check the map out and zoom in and zoom out, because that's the only way you get a sense of scale. Because right now you just look at the map and you're like, oh, there's this red line, and it goes by Nashville, sort of. You see Nashville and Murfreesboro and all these different places in Tennessee. And when you realize just how long that distance is, it sort of starts to paint that picture. So this is a set course. You have like a GPS that you're using to follow it, or a map? Because you obviously want to stay on course. You don't want to.
Yes, there's written directions that are pretty good. That are certainly better than Barkley directions.
You have to find books every 30 feet.
Luckily, no. You check in twice a day. So 7:30 at night and morning, we would basically log in and just say where we were. Okay. But that's the only thing. That's the only way anyone really knows where you are in course.
Can you use your phone to find a gas station and stuff like that, and facilities?
Totally. Yeah. So there's that because the other part of it is like you're running at all different times of day. So you might be coming into town and you don't, and these are small towns for the most part, really small towns. And there might not be a gas station. There might not be one that is open past 8 o'clock. I don't think the race would be possible without like Shell gas stations. A lot of them are open 24 hours. No, seriously, like in a lot of cases, I don't know what you would do in these huge stretches. And, I'd get to a Shell at like, 2 in the morning, and it's the only thing open and the only way to get food and calories or water. Wow. So, you're literally like living off the land. There's nothing. You sort of take whatever is coming at you.
It's interesting because even as you're describing it, it sounds a bit like a through hike, or a long PCT section where you are kind of relying on trail angels, or you're relying on sources of water that just, there are ways that you can track where the water sources will be, but the reality is it could be dry. But when you get there, you don't know until you actually see it, and it sort of feels, as you're describing it, like every opportunity to get food or water or shelter or a break is sort of a, oh, thank God, like there's something here and I get something out of it.
Yeah.
How bad were the sections where that wasn't the case? Were there sections where you would have to go a long time without food or water and just not know what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's one section that was like 31 miles, just wide open. And again, this is in July in Tennessee, so it is like 90 plus degrees, like humidity, about as high as it can get. And so there's this one section that it's just 31 miles, and you are like, for me, I was on like wide open highway. There's nothing out there, and sun is just beating down on you the whole time.
Oh,
And you just can't be like there was a town in the middle called Hampshire, and there was like maybe a spigot that, like behind like a dilapidated, like a closed convenience store that like maybe was gonna have water, and that was the only thing I had to go on, and there's nothing else. And so this is one of those occasions where, I mean, I'm just running down this highway, and I've been going like 10, 15 miles, and I'm just like, when is the water? I'm gonna run out of water. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna die out here. And then out of nowhere, I just see like this awning on someone's house. There's this house in the middle of nowhere on the side of the highway, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There's like a house with like this little awning, and I'm like getting goosebumps like thinking about it. Like I ran up to it, and they just had two chairs and a little cooler, and you could sit down, and there was like little bottles of water and some snacks and some Gatorades, and I just like burst into tears. I mean, I like completely lost it. They had this little guest book. Some people had this. It was awesome. This little guest book that was like, "Hey, we'd love to know where you're from," and I opened it up, and I started writing this note. I'm like, I'm almost crying sitting here, blah 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 blah. But I look down, and I'm literally, the page is getting wet because I'm bawling onto the page. I'm crying all over their guest book, and so I had to go back and cross out the almost. And I was like, I'm crying sitting here, because you just like that like gratitude. I've never felt since immense gratitude to people before in my life. And it was really funny. I look over, and like 150 feet off on this side, there's like this old beat up pickup truck, and there's this like septuagenarian that's just like wrenching on his pickup truck in overalls, and I'm like, oh my god, thank you so much. And he just kind of like almost doesn't acknowledge me. I don't even know what his deal. He was just like kind of like just staring at me, and I was like, thank you. And he's just like sitting back there like wrenching on the truck. But I just, man, the immense gratitude. And again, this house, it's on the middle of the highway. They're not particularly well off people, it would seem, and they go to this trouble of putting these little bottles of water out for people, and like it's just it was really amazing. And that happened 3 different times where I just like burst into tears when I saw like a sign or a cooler or something. It's my favorite memory from the race.
I'm getting goosebumps just listening, because I'm imagining my worst suffering in an ultra, or just that moment where you're like, I don't have what I need.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to multiply that by 1,000, because I imagine that's what this is. Remind me the name of the town that this was near.
I was coming out of Hohenwald and headed to Columbia.
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna try to find like Google Street View of this house during this show. I want to try to find it so we can thank this individual for having this. I just am like hanging on your words, because I can only imagine what it's like in this open highway, open fields, direct sun, super hot, July in Tennessee.
Yes.
And you're out of everything, and there's a fucking little aid station that someone who's just watches these people run by his house.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like road angels, it literally feels like a miracle. Like that is the actual sensation, and I just had never experienced that before.
Wow.
It was really, really, like I said, a really cool part of the course that I you just don't get those experiences, like with other races. You're like, oh, I'm gonna get to this aid station. It's gonna happen here. Like you expect it, even if it takes forever to get to that aid station. You're like, where is it? This is like, you just don't know what's gonna happen to you. in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. It was like 1 a.m. around mile 251. I walked through an Arby's drive-through, and the girl working the drive-through just gave me all the food for free because she's like, good luck. And I was like, what? And so I'm standing there. There's like pickups behind me. I have like curly fries and a roast beef sandwich and a Jamocha shake. And I was just like, what is this? What's my life? That's sort of the question you get a lot, like that you give yourself during the race. Like, what is my life right now? What is this even? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk more about that. I want to talk more about like the interactions with people that you have, because you are, I mean, you're towards the front. Like, you're probably you finished what, third?
Fifth, third screwed runner. And also I would say Bob and Bev, who finished ahead of me and broke course records because they're amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're going so fast or we just stopped at different places, but as the race progresses, you have 106 people this year that are going through, and so you start to see people, and it starts to be this caravan as the race continues on for several days.
Mm-hmm.
But I was basically like I was sort of in the front, and so almost every single person that I interacted with had like zero context for what was going on. So I would be like the first person at a gas station, and I'll just be like rolling around on the ground, like rubbing various lubes and goos on my feet, and like trash is spilling out everywhere, and I'm powdering, and people would just like, I had this one like church lady who like waved me over, and she's like, "Are you in trouble?" And I was like, "Yeah, but no." And she's like, do you need help? And I was like, again, yes, but not really. But yeah, you just get it all the time. I had like managers of gas stations come over and say that people have been like worried about me, like it progresses. That was the joke, is like, as the race went on, more and more people seemed more and more concerned about my general state of being concerned or like suspicious of. That's the other thing.
I do want to get into some of that stuff too, but yes, please, Kim, if you've got questions here from the live chat.
Just a comment from the live chat from Maria Delzat. Hi, Maria. Maria says the humanity is so moving. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best to find this awning, and I'm on the right highway. I'm on the right freeway.
The awning's not going to be there.
Yeah,
You're never going to find it. But it
this
probably
didn't exist. The awning didn't exist. This is all in Andy's imagination. I know.
Yeah, I'll have to find it.
It also puts into perspective of like running an ultra where there's aid stations, and you get to the aid stations and you're like, they ran out of Coke, and then you're like mad about like them not having a variety of sodas.
Oh, I got into this. It was gonna be like my dinner. I got it. It was the second night I was in Linden at like mile like 120 or something, and I was at the Shell station, and I was like, I blew past all these restaurants, and I was like, I'm going to go to this 24-hour Shell station. It must be a good one if it's 24 hours, which I learned later on is not the case. You learn as the race goes on. And I go in, and they have like zero food in there. There's just like nothing to eat. Like, I mean, they have food, but it's like, I was, some places would have pizza and like other like warm food. And I was just like, I want like actual dinner. I've been eating Rice Krispie treats and paydays and Jack Links for like the last 40 hours. I need
God.
Which didn't stop for the entire race. But I just remember I went to the counter, and there was like a couple fried things there. And the guy was like, I was like, hey, can I have those chicken fingers? And he was like, we're out of chicken fingers. I was like, can I, whatever those are, there's like a basket of something. I was like, I want the chicken, whatever that is. He's like, we don't have any. And I was like, I'm like staring at them. They're chicken tenders. And I was like, can I just have whatever that is? I want that. And he was like, it's onions. And I was like, what? I mean, they're clearly chicken fingers, but he was like, they're onions. And I was like, I'm not going to, eat onions. Even maybe I was out of my mind. So cut to, I'm just like outside with like a can of like cold Chef Boyardee, just shoveling shoveling cold Chef Boyardee into my mouth with my fingers and drinking like a bottle of milk. And I was like, dinner at Ball State.
Oh my God, dude.
Even when you get the stuff when you like thought that you were safe, like sometimes you'd once again be surprised what was happening.
I just want to know what the guy's deal was.
Seriously. So you weren't hallucinating
were you
chicken
out of your
fingers.
mind?
Yeah, were you out of your mind?
Or
Like,
was the guy out
want
of
that
his mind?
box
The
of
funny thing
onions.
is, I read someone's race report, and the exact same scene played out in someone's race report that I read previously. And
From
so
another
now
year or from this year?
from a couple years ago. So now that I say that, that does make it sound like I was hallucinating the whole thing and just imagining it. But I don't think I was. I wasn't that messed up at that point. I didn't have any hallucinations except for I heard a bunch of people talking in walkie-talkies off in the woods, and that was like 2 hours after that. So,
But let's be honest.
maybe
All of this could be true. We truly don't know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I imagine that this race has more lore and like stories of randomness like this than any other. Just human interaction in rural areas from people who are hallucinating because they're running 300 plus miles, interacting with people who are just going about their everyday life. Like there's going to be some sort of, I remember it this way, the craziest thing happened. And if you were to talk to the other person, they'd be like, you should have seen yourself when you came up to me. I do want to, let's get maybe one more live question. And then I want to show the video clip that Andy sent us of what felt like a harrowing moment in this thing.
Yeah, there's a question early on from Brian in the chat room. Brian asked, Andy, was there an attraction to Vol State beyond just the distance?
I think just the unaided nature of it. I just, it's fascinating to me, and it is what makes the race just so singular. You know, I think you kind of touched on that for a second, Ethan, with like this idea that you're going through this world and interacting with people who have no context and don't know what you're doing. And I think I thought a lot about this. What Vol State offers you is like the single-mindedness of pursuit amid a world that's like swirling around and chaotic and like directionless in a way, right? Like you're sort of you're plunked down and you have this one mission and it's all you think about, and you're just moving towards that horizon like constantly and trying to solve every problem. It's just this real single-mindedness of purpose. And then you're moving through like people just getting gas at the gas station, or like someone driving to work, or like the world is like kind of this messy globular place, and you're sort of like slicing through it during the race. And it's just really I don't know, I've never experienced anything quite like that before. It's really neat.
This feels a lot like we just saw Tim Olsen cross through Snoqualmie Pass here in Washington State on his way to setting the fastest known time supported on the PCT. Yep. He at that point had run 2,300 miles of the 2,600 miles of the PCT. And we just happened to catch him. We just happened to catch him kind of coming in on the PCT. And it was one of those moments where like, oh my God, we get to see Timmy. This is great. And we were suddenly sort of shook by what do you say to someone who's been traveling through the world, through the wilderness, over mountains, from state to state to state?
Just super deep in what he's doing.
Because we had the awareness as ultra runners, sort of the mindset that he might be in, it was sort of a recognition of he's on another plane. Like he's moving forward, he's slicing through. The world hasn't really existed outside of his bubble for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I imagine it was similar for you. You got to experience something that very few humans get to experience, which is I like talking about this, dude, because when we run hundreds, when we run 50Ks, 50 milers, 100Ks, we get a little dose of it. I feel like we get like a little, man, I did so much today. I did this 62-mile run today, and I get to go home and have dinner, or I get to go be with my family.
But life is still happening
outside
around
of that.
you. Yeah.
Whereas you got to have your race in that life that's going on outside of you and actually look at it. Did you have any profound moments of preference? Like, I prefer to be in the race and sort of letting the world go on around me, or did you miss being in that
No, it
bustle?
was no, I mean, yeah, I think again the race like provides this framework that hundreds don't, because right, everyone's there to service you, and you're sort of cloistered away from the world. And so this is just, you're deep in the world and the world doesn't give a fuck about you. And so the only person you have is yourself. And so maybe that's why those moments with like road angels and stuff are so like, they cut through so hard, because someone recognizes you for the first time in days or something, you know? But I think the other thing that was really neat, it sharpens the moments also where you just like stop and take stuff in. Like one of my other favorite moments was like, oh man, mile, I don't even know what it would have been, 186 or something. It was just the middle of the night. No, it was like 190 something. The middle of the night, I was just like beat up. I was sort of death marching that night to get to a town. And I got to this little gas station, this little convenience store on the side of the road. And I just like laid down in it. And they had this, for some reason, they had this fan. This is like outside patio with this top and this fan going. And I just freaking laid down on the concrete with my legs up. And I just like watched the fan. And there were these like June bugs that were just like bumping around, just like idiots, like bumping around on the ceiling and stuff, and little spiders. And I just sat there for like 20 minutes, just like kind of taking this little world in. And I don't know, I grew up outside of Atlanta, and so sometimes when I go back to the South, it kind of like, it's reminiscent. I don't know, it just felt like being kind of home again. It was just this like one really pure little moment where I just sat there and sort of like took it in. And so I think it does that too, right? Like when the moments when you do rest, it gives you a chance to really experience like the really microscopic things as well.
Would you consider this one of the more transcendent ultra experiences that you've had? It certainly sounds like it.
Yeah, for sure.
I do want to show this clip. So Andy sent me a number of videos. I'm going to show one of them. Most of them are do you have them in your stories, like on Instagram or something, like on one of the shelf?
Not a lot of them, but
they're great. So here, I'll show this one. This is essentially, Andy, could you set up the trailer for your movie?
Of course. So this is around mile 70, first night.
Oh, pretty early.
Yeah, I was in the lead in this point actually, and again, another stretch of highway, like 20 miles, nothing at all. And this crazy electrical storm blew in. I was leaving town and I knew the storm was coming in. And I was like, if I leave this where I am, I'm just going to be on the open road for 20 miles. And I was like, well, hopefully it won't get that bad. And then it did get that bad. And it was, I mean, just one of the worst storms I've ever been in my entire life. And again, open road. And I was cresting up over this hill. I realized that I was coming to a high point on the road. And I was like, oh, great. Not only am I out in the open, I'm going as high. I'm going to be the highest thing out here. And I was like, I have to get over this hill. And so I sprinted. There's lightning going everywhere. And I came down the other side. And again, like a miracle, there was this church, this United Methodist church in the middle of nowhere on the side of this highway. And I could see the lights on and there's a little awning. And I just like sprinted under it and just dove under this little portico and holed up there. And so where this clip that you have was like, I ducked under there maybe like 20 minutes prior, and I just like whipped out my phone. I was like, I'm just going to document what's happening.
Here we go. This is a clip from Andy Pearson's new movie titled I Made It.
Yay, Vol State! Got caught in a really nasty thunderstorm, and it kind of seemed far away, but then the strikes were getting within like a mile, and I was cresting over this hill on like this open highway, and just started running and found this like random church here. I'm just like hiding under this portico, and I'm gonna I don't know, wait. I don't think the rain's gonna stop for a while, but at least I want the lightning to get a little farther away before I keep going. This is pretty gnarly. So yeah, holy shit. Oh my god, we just lost power. Holy shit, the whole place just lost power. Oh man, I hope everybody else is okay and finds there was like nothing on this highway. Oh, all right, well, this might be my home for tonight. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll try to get a little sleep now. I don't know. Okay. See you guys later.
Bonkers, man. I mean, it's like terrifying to be out there alone, to be out there in a storm like that, lightning, just craziness. You've managed to find a little shelter, then the power goes out. Just all of these things combined. This is night one.
No, yeah.
This isn't even, you're not even like a third of the way into it. You're like just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this got real. Yeah, that was scary, like legit scary when that was going on.
So throughout this, there are other runners out there that are also making their way across Tennessee. There's no aid stations. Are there course marshals or anybody that's going along sort of like, how do you get updates, or is it just
on
people? Do you get updates?
I mean, you don't know what's the only thing you know that's going on is that, like I said, that's 7:30 a.m. and p.m. check-in.
Okay.
Was be dumped to basically a Google sheet, so you could see where everybody was. So that's the only thing that you knew was going on. And then, Laz would always write an update around the same time, which was always that was the only thing I allowed myself to receive from the outside world, I guess. Because you have your phone on you, and so some people are like, there's a WhatsApp group that some runners are in, that they're sharing information. They're like, oh hey, I just left this motel in Linden. There's a room, you can stay there for the night or whatever. People are sharing stuff. But I was like, posting on Facebook, I was like, I want to be like a monk. I don't want to know anything that's going on. I don't want to be distracted. I want to be like fully in this. But the one little luxury I allowed myself was to read Laz's posts, his sort of analysis of everything that was going on.
I'm continually impressed by what you do and how you do it and why you do these things. It's not just, it does feel like a spiritual journey for you, like a journey of discovery more than like a pursuit of accolades. And I think that's something super special about what you do and why you do it. Let's maybe get to one or two more live questions. Yeah. And then we'll sort of wrap up the main show.
Yeah, a question from Nathaniel in the chat room. They asked, Andy, you speak of the everyday moments of people's lives that you saw at Vol State. What do you think the people with whom you interacted thought of you?
I can tell you, one of them thought I was a dead body, because
we're still debating that. We're still debating that.
So it's so funny. You get all kinds of reactions. Some people at I got a motel the first night because I was injured and blah, blah, blah. And people, so they come in and the woman's like, oh, is it that time of year again? Like people know, some people know what's up. Some people have, like I said, have zero context. And then sometimes you just have like these crazy interactions. Like this is a funny story. The last thing you do is this giant climb up to the finish, and at mile 308 or something, and I was just like, I have to lay down before I do this. And so it's at this like T intersection. It's the middle of the night 4, and I just like laid down in a ditch with my legs up on this sign,
off the side of the highway, and it's in the middle of nowhere. And I just like am laying there chugging a Red Bull, and I'm like working up the courage just to like hike up this giant climb. And a couple of cars, I was laying there long enough that a few cars came down, and they would like kind of like came by real slow with like the lights on, like right on my feet. And I realized they could see my feet just like sticking up out of the grass. And this happened like a couple times. And I one time I was just like, I just like threw up. I was like, yeah, good. Just like threw up, thumbs up. But then later on, when Laz and they'll come meet you at the finish, so you have to tell them that you're getting close. They said that they came through that intersection, and there was like a sheriff car, like right there at the intersection. They mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that was me, because someone definitely called me in as a dead body because I was just like in the ditch. So it's just this like band. It's like this band of misfits and vagrants just marching across Tennessee, and some people love it. It's awesome, and some people like I think don't love it so much. But it's always an interesting week, I think. For everyone.
I mean, I guess I got to bring up the subject of safety.
Yeah.
How is this
It's not
dealt with?
Oh, you mean in terms of like
do you
what?
have to sign a waiver? Do you have to? Does he let the police know that you're coming through townships? To like,
my understanding, someone said that Laz used to send out basically a bulletin to all the police departments to let them know this was happening. I don't know if that still happens. The police seem to know. I would get waves from them and stuff. But I mean, I will say this race is not safe. It is like not safe. And people do this every year. It's a big social event because I think people really make really good friends and spend all this time together. And so people really come back. It's sort of this reunion event. But I will say I'm so glad I did it, and I never want to do it again. It really is scary at certain points. It was really scary. And I also think like, you know, potentially if you're doing it fast or something, you're probably taking slightly more calculated risks than people who are walking and going a little bit more slowly. But yeah, so it scared me more than any race I've ever been in, for sure. Way more than Barkley, I'll say, like way scarier than Barkley, because I feel confident in controlling my own self, but I can't control other people, and I can't control cars, and I can't control other stuff like that. And so that's just why there's sort of an element that feels a little unknown, I think.
It's I appreciate you, Andy, for who you are as a person, and that's why I really enjoy talking to you about these adventures, is because I think you have a way of putting them into perspective in a way that's unique and special. And I do love living vicariously through you, so I don't have to do these things.
Yeah, we'll just keep it that way. We'll just always just live vicariously through Andy.
And you know, I know this race particularly is controversial. It has a large online community that's just sort of like, they don't, you know, they look at it differently. And I wanted to make sure that we did talk about the safety aspect of it, Andy. And I do appreciate you being open to it. But again, a huge congratulations. I mean, just the accomplishment alone is a testament to your ability as an athlete. And I love that it was a transcendent journey for you, and you were able to take a lot out of it. You got to write a book. I'm just going to tell you right now, man, all of your adventures, you've done so much crazy, amazing, beautiful stuff that I would read. If every one of these is just a chapter, I'd read the shit out of this book.
In all your free time, from working and training and being a dad.
Sure.
Just write a book for us.
Your next 500-mile adventure, just write a page of the book every day, every hour.
500. Slow down.
We've already signed you up. You don't have a choice.
That's the next one, right?
You're doing UTMB 5 times. It's a new race. U5, T5, M5, B5. That was the dumbest thing I've said all night. Andy, we appreciate you so much for being a part of tonight's show and to just share a little bit of the story with us. We are going to move into our after show with Andy Pearson. So if any remaining questions remain, we'll ask those during our after show, of course. But Andy, where can people find you online? I know that these, like, we just showed one of the videos tonight. You have a bunch from that. There's got to be a way that people can either follow you on social or that sort of thing. Where can people find you?
Instagram is I Even Shot This. And yeah, I'm gonna try to put together an official something about all of this whole experience at some point. So it'll somewhere.
Our guest tonight was the Andy Pearson, one of our dear friends and excellent
Andy Pearson.
And
actually, Heather Reed in the chat has a book title suggestion already. Heather says the book should be titled Junior Ranger Andy Pearson's Guide to Ultra Stupid Stuff.
That's a good callback.
Yeah.
Junior Ranger Andy Pearson's Guide to Ultra Stupid Stuff.
There it is.
I read the shit out of that book. It's brilliant. Thank you, Heather. And a huge thank you to our wonderful guest, Andy Pearson. We do like to end our shows by recognizing members of the community who go above and beyond. Obviously, Andy tonight is a perfect example of someone going above and beyond and doing something truly amazing. But we do call it our GR crew member of the week.
You got this.
I got it. Kim, who is this week's GR crew member?
This week's GR crew member of the week is the one and only Chris Danucci.
Woo!
We had the pleasure of going to cheer on Chris as he did the Jack and Jill Marathon locally here. He was cruising along, finished in a solid 2:44, which was good enough for 4th place.
Yeah. Solid run by Chris Danucci.
It was really fun to get out and cheer him on.
He now lives up here in the Northwest, so it's super awesome. And shout out to Seth LaRue, who is now a new member of the channel. Thank you, Seth. We appreciate you joining, and give you a little shout out there towards the end of the show. But that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Ginger Runner Live. We'll see you guys next Monday for another Ginger Runner Live. Every day for Daily Brew. If you would like to join us, you can do so over at patreon.com/thegingerrunner, which is where we're going to go right now for our after show with Andy Pearson. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to Ginger Runner Live. We'll see you next week. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. Bye.
Thanks, all.
Ginger